Would you take your message notes out with me? How to tell right from wrong. Psalm 23, verse 3. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. There's a lot of moral ambiguity about what is right and what is wrong. Is it right? Is it wrong? How do I determine if something is right or if something is wrong? And that's important. Let me say this, that life is always made up of a series of decisions and choices. And what makes life complicated today is that we are inundated with the choices and inundated with decisions. When I was younger, there was only 3 television stations you could watch, and they went off about at midnight. There was only 1 radio station you could listen to, and that was WLOU, and it went off about 6 o'clock with them singing "Lift Every Voice and Sing." But now you got so many choices. And in a world where there's so many choices, it's easy to make the wrong choice and go down the wrong path. And that's no minor issue, because success in life, fundamentally, when you just water it down, let me tell you what successful people have done. You ready? Here it is. It's not deep, y'all. Successful people have made the right choices. That's it. They've made the right choices. In fact, this is worth filling in the blank. So get this down. We make our decisions, and then our decisions make us. We make our decisions. Some of you educators and some of you teachers, you ought to put that down in the classroom. You make the decision, and now the decision is making you. Because every decision we make has consequences. Has consequences. Now, what does this have to do with religion? Well, one of the contributions that God makes to us in our lives is God helps us to make right decisions. Or as David would say in this very familiar psalm that we know so well, he leads us down the right paths for his name's sake, which is to say that when you are truly following God, one of the benefits of following God is that God will always lead us down the right path for his name's sake. 2 things we get from our faith is this. First of all, our faith truly meets our spiritual needs. Our spiritual needs. And every last one of us has a spiritual need. There is a God-shaped hole in every heart, and that God-shaped hole can only be filled by God. God meets our spiritual needs. And what do I mean by spiritual needs? Spiritual needs is that which gives meaning and hope in the midst of life, losses, tragedies, and failures. So whenever you're having a tragedy, or whether it's a loss, you've lost someone or lost something, or you're experiencing a tragedy, what spirituality do is it helps you to give meaning to it. Why is this happening? And then spirituality helps to give you hope beyond it. That's what spirituality does. We are spiritual beings, and we are hit with heavy-duty trouble. And when heavy-duty trouble comes, we need a spiritual perspective that helps to give meaning to it and hope beyond it. And that's one of the reasons why we come to church and unpack Scripture for spiritual strength. But not only does God give us spiritual strength, but God gives us directional strength. He leads us in the right paths. So when we're unclear about, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I marry this person? Should I stay away from this person? God gives us direction. He leads us in the paths that are right. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. All thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. He'll give you some direction. Now, let me say this, that whatever is the right thing to do in life or the wrong thing to do, if it's truly right, then the right things in life don't change, which means they are perennial and they're universal, which means that if something is right in America, it's right in Europe. If it's wrong in Asia, it's wrong in Africa. Because what is right and what is wrong is always universal. And listen to me, it is always timeless. So if it was wrong yesterday, if it was really wrong, it's wrong today. For example, the big things in life never change, the important things in life. Watch this. Yesterday, when I was in the first grade, 2 plus 2 was 4. And guess what 2 plus 2 is today that I'm 39? It is still 4. And guess what it will be 25 years from now when I'm 45? It will still be 4. Why? Because the important things in life don't change. Joe Logan is one of the great organists in the world. When he was first starting to play music, let me tell you what middle C was. Hit middle C, man. That was middle C years ago when he first started. What's middle C today? Next week, you're going to have a concert with the Legacy Choir, right, Joe? You're going to hit middle C sometime, right? What will middle C be next week? And guess what? What is right and what is wrong is just like middle C. It's just like 2 plus 2 is 4. What was true yesterday is true today, and what's true today is true tomorrow. And that is why many of you now sound like your parents. Something comes out of your mouth, you trying to tell your child, and all of a sudden you just have wait a minute. Where did I hear this before? Because it's the same thing your parents told you. And then you're telling your kids. And guess what's going to happen? They're going to tell their kids. And when it comes to right and wrong, what is right and what is wrong, they do not change. And you can always tell when something's right or something wrong when you put it to certain tests. And I want to give you those tests very quickly, but I want to label a little bit on the last test. And I want you to take your notes and pull out your camera because I want you to be conversant in the words, the glossary of words I'm going to give you this morning. The first is this, the expense test. In other words, you can tell, is this right or this wrong by what it's going to cost you. There's nowhere in the Bible that it says, watch this, you will not find this word, thou shalt not snort cocaine. You won't find it. But let me tell you how you know that it's not right. Because of the cost that you have to pay. And if the cost puts you in the rear, if it puts you in the red, then it's probably not right. There's a sign on the cleaners on Dixie Highway that I used to take my clothes to. It's right on Dixie Highway. And they got a sign up, and this is what the sign says, right posted, because it's right posted on Dixie Highway, right near Rallies. And the sign says, we only keep a limited amount of change in this cash register. Before you rob us, ask yourself, is this change worth 10 years in the penitentiary? And then if you calculate a few, they say $50, and 10 years, if it's not worth it, then it ain't right. Because the things that are right always put your life in the black. For example, to be promiscuous, and when you could have a husband or you could have a wife and you could have a marriage where you're developing in love with each other and commitment to each other and growing from romance to authentic friendship, and then to blow that on a sexual liaison, is that right? No, it's wrong, because it's not worth the price that you have to pay. To have children all over Louisville and to have your check reduced for a few minutes of pleasure, but 30 years of pain. Is it worth it? The answer is no. Because you can always tell if something is right or something is wrong is, does this decision put my life in the black, or does it put my decision in the red? And if it's putting you in the red, I don't care how good it may feel to you, baby. Because how many of you know everything good feels good to you is not good? That's what your mama told you. Now y'all saying the same thing, right? So does it pass the expense test? Then put this down. Does it pass the exposure test? In other words, if what you are about to do was put on the front of the Courier Journal, would you want it? Would you want a stripper with the basketball team in a men's dorm? And if you don't want that exposed, anything you do not want exposed, it ain't right. Because if it's right, then it will pass the scrutiny of public exposure. That is why, what are they putting on police officers now? Body cams. Why? Because before a police officer abuses someone, that police have to say, now, wait a minute. Do I want what I'm about to do to be exposed after the camera shows it to the public? And then they think, me beating this person when they're handcuffed does not pass the exposure test. There was a kid who had his in a cell who was handcuffed behind his back, and one of the officers cold-cocked him, and it was all on tape, and it went viral. And as soon as he did it, he realized, oh my God, I'm on tape, and he tried to clean it up, but it was too late. And let me tell you something, there's cameras everywhere in our world. And the question is, will it pass the exposure test? Will it pass the expense test? And then put this down, will it pass the excellence test? 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 5 says what? Do your what? In other words, what you bring does it represent your best? If it does not represent your best, it's not good. Now, success is not being the best. Success is being your best. And the question is, it's always good when it represents your best effort. Does this grade represent my best? Does what I'm doing represent my best? One of the reasons why you always have supplemental notes on Sunday is because after Saturday's sermon, I'm not satisfied with it. So I go back to my study and I start writing and rethinking, rephrasing, and trying to recraft words and trying to use my mind to pound on hard facts to make them practical. And that's why you got to have supplemental notes, because I wasn't satisfied with Saturday, so I had to say, you know what, I preached that sermon, so let me just go on and give them at 9:40. No. Because when I get up before you, I want to come with the best of my ability with my A game. Because it's not good. It's not good if it does not meet the excellence test. That's what makes our music department so well. I mean, Erica could give them a quick 10-minute choir rehearsal. Say, sing this, okay, good enough. But she's going to keep listening and saying, okay, no, let's do it over. No, let's try it again. No, that y'all phone here. No, let's try it again. No, let's try it again. We tired, girl. No, sit back down. We ain't ready to go yet. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Why did she do that? Because when they come before you, they want to bring excellence. And it's always good when you are bringing your best, your excellence. My grandfather used to pour concrete, and he was a poor sharecropper, came from northern Alabama, but he made big money with only an 8th grade education. Largest concrete man in the state back in the 60s, black minority. But the reason why they hired him and he would get the contract is because when they poured their concrete, he poured the concrete floor at Ballard High School. You go to Ballard, all that floor out at Ballard's was poured by my grandfather in 8th grade education. But you know why he got the job? Because when he poured the concrete, if it wasn't right, he'd have him dig it up, pour it again. We'll stay up here all night until we get it, because we want it to reflect excellence, because God is a God of excellence. Oh, Lord, our Lord, how excellent. And if you're made in God's image and God is excellent and you're God's child, then you should be excellent. And then put this down. Does it pass the example test? The example test. In other words, when you think of the people who you want to impress, who mean the most to you, will those people say to you, the people that you want as your examples, will they say to you, boy, I'm sure I'm proud of you? Will one day your mother and your father, when you get to heaven, look at you and say, girl, I'm so proud of you? And if you can in your mind say, you know what, I know this would make my mama happy. This would have made my daddy happy. I remember when I spoke at the Muhammad Ali funeral. I mean, I worked on that message. I was there in the back going over it in my head. I worked on it. I worked on it. I worked on it because I knew it was going to be an international stage, and I wanted to please my dad, who I knew would be watching in heaven, because every son wants to please his father. Let me tell you something. The greatest compliment any father can say to his son, I'm talking about father, son, is, son, I'm proud of you. And I wanted my example, who was my father, to be able to say, I'm proud of me. So I got myself together and I went up there with Bill Clinton and all those boys. And I said, let's bring it. And I brought my A game to the best of my ability, because I wanted the person who I admire, my dad, who was hard to please, say, proud of you, boy. And you should want to live your life so that somebody who is invested in you, who you believe in, who believes in you, will one day look at you with a smile and say, I'm so proud of you. And if you're doing that, then you're probably on the right path. And then put this down, the expansion test. What do you mean by the expansion test? In other words, ask yourself the question, where will this act ultimately take me a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And if you don't like where it's going to take you 3 years from now, it ain't right. Every alcoholic had his first drink. And had the alcoholic knew that the first drink was going to expand to where he is right now, let me tell you what he would not have done, she would not have done. They would not have taken the first drink. Let me see if I can illustrate it. Watch this. Watch this. Watch this. You've seen it before, but watch this. Put it on the screen, David.
Your cable goes out, you get stressed. When you get stressed, you need to get away. When you need to get away.
Had big fatty face known that cable was going to put him in this position, what would he have chosen? He went straight up DirecTV. And how many of you can look back and say, had I known that this decision was going to result in this, I never would have gone there. And don't think about the immediate. That's called being a child. What makes a child is that they have no understanding of sequence. Children don't understand sequence. The reason they act like a fool in the classroom today is because they're a child and they don't understand that what you do today affects tomorrow. They have no understanding of how yesterday, today, and tomorrow are all intertwined. Because they don't understand sequence. And that's understandable with a child. But when you're 30, and when you're 40, you got to understand sequence, expansion, and then put this down. You know it's right or wrong, and I just want to labor here just a few minutes, and I'll let you go, and that is the exchange test. And by exchange, I mean, you know it's right or wrong by asking yourself, what I'm making somebody else do, if we had an exchange, would I want it myself? Or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know that gossip is wrong because you don't want someone gossiping about you. And if you don't want it yourself, don't do it to somebody else. It's called sportsmanship. Now, let me take it from the theoretical and bring it home to Louisville. I want you to hear me because I want you to know what's going on in our city. Around the corner from us, there is a YMCA that is being built. This has to do with sportsmanship. And I am thankful, let me say it again, for the YMCA and its great work. We need Y's and other institutions in West Louisville that is such it's been so economically disinvested that it's good to see the Y come. And I am in support of the Y. But what I am not in support of is how philanthropy in this community and foundations give certain institutions on the basis of race support and big dollars. And the anchor institutions that have been in this community, West Louisville, and it's happening, it's called gentrification, it's happening all over the country. The anchor institutions, Dr. Kirby, good to see you, sir. The anchor institutions that have been in this community, like St. Stephen's Family Life Center for 30 years, don't get the philanthropic dollars. It's not fair. When we had to build our Family Life Center in 1989, we had to take out a loan from Burt Klein and the bank, Louisville Bank, the Louisville Bank, Bank of Louisville, thank you, the Bank of Louisville. We had to take out our bank, and guess what? We had to meet a monthly note, and I had to come to you and say, don't forget Women's Day, don't forget Men's Day, don't forget church anniversary, don't forget your dollar makes a difference. And you did it. And we paid it off, and we sustained it because every week you give $1. My daughter, every week, she said, I missed my tithes, so put my tithes in for me this week. And she gives $5 every week for $1 makes a difference. And it's that kind of contributions and membership that has sustained. It's called free enterprise. It's called being market driven. You have something the market wants, You sell it to the market, it's called free enterprise. It's free. But if the YMCA, which we need, comes to our community, and instead of having to do what we did, and that's to take out a loan and pay it off with the people who live in the community, they get to set up their Y because the foundations who have billions of dollars give them money so that they never have a note, and they subsidize their memberships in any way, and my memberships were never subsidized, and I didn't get any philanthropic dollars, then I'm going to say that's not right because it does not meet the standard of fairness. It does not meet the standard of sportsmanship, especially when you stop to think about what our institution has meant to this community for decades. For example, to have a bank that's over in the community that will open up in 2 weeks, a virtual teller will be at the bank in this community. It's in this poor, desperate community that has lost 50% of its population. Since 1950 and 1980, California has lost 50% of its population. But you bring a bank in because of our members and the Benzes, who are just wonderful Christian people. Larry, Patty, we have down the street, Pro Rehab, took a chance and said, and it hasn't been easy for them. They say, let's do members of our church and say, let's put up a pro rehab. And that's because you have created the foundation in our institution to bring in a pro rehab. A grocery store. So when you go to the Family Life Center now, there's an actual grocery store. We've got to get the money because we've got to put the equipment in so that there will be fresh, frozen foods and milk and all these things right here. They'll come to your church. Tell me a church that has a bank in it. Show me a church, please, anywhere in America that has a restaurant. Show me a church there, anywhere in America that has a grocery store. In the poorest zip code in Louisville, Kentucky, with a fitness center, an indoor walking track, and a room that can become the Omni West. It's not happening. And of all that we've done, the greatest thing that we've been able to do, which has never been done before in history, is the resurgence of Simmons College as a historical black college and university in this city. We're so successful now at Simmons, and it's all because of your support. It's the Saints, because of your support, that Jefferson County Public School System says we want to develop a unique partnership with you so you can help us recruit teachers. So the National Baptist Convention of America that moved its headquarters from Florida to Louisville, this is the second largest black organization in the world, moved to Louisville. The president is going to be sending hundreds of kids to Louisville to get into the teachers education program at Simmons College of Kentucky so we can diversify have more minority teachers in the classroom. And all this is taking place. We brought in a woman who is the greatest educator on the planet, and that's Sharon Porter Robinson, who was the former Assistant Secretary of Education, who's going to be running the Department of Education. She is the PhD from the University of Kentucky with 2 degrees in education from UK. All this intellectual capital that's coming to our community that was never in our community before, simply because there is a Simmons College of Kentucky, which is going to create, you won't see it all in your lifetime, but in the next generation, potentially a black middle class. Let me explain what I mean by that. Because listen, right now we have, and this is not with the top accreditation. We're trying to get the top accreditation by 2023. If we get that, it's over. It's over. If we get SACS, it's over. We got national accreditation. We're trying to get SACS. If you have, for example, we have like 250 students. Our band, which went from 7 to 56, we are poised to be at 100 next year. And we will bring in 1,000 students. Once we get SACS, 1,000 students. Tuition, do the math. Tuition is $10,000 per year. Once we get SACS, 1,000 students paying $10,000 a year. They are already coming from all over the country. 1,000 students, do the math, equals $10 million every year coming to California, to the west end of Louisville, that has never been done before in the history of this country. And then what I did is I went to our banker who gave the Y over $1 million. And I said, well, if it's fair, I believe in justice and fairness. Let's see if we can get the same amount for our institution since the Y's not open yet. We've been open for 30 years. And they say, well, this is what we're going to do for you. We're going to give you $20,000 this year and $15,000 next year and $15,000 the next year. $50,000. And I got up and I said, no, I don't want it. Keep it. I'm not going to let you disrespect us with $50,000 when you sold $50,000. We don't get that $50,000, but I walked away with my dignity. Because it's like a football field. Equity is this. This is what equity is. This is what justice. That's justice. Why? Because it's an even playing field. It's even. It's equal. But if you got a playing field like this, watch this, where some have to constantly climb uphill while others get leverage to go downhill, then you will always have a West Louisville because there's no justice, there's no equity. And anytime there's no justice and there's no equity, anytime we don't live up to our creed with liberty and justice for all, then you know it's not right if you're doing for someone that you're not doing for all. It's not right. So I said, I'm not going to take it. Then I went to Brown-Forman. And Brown-Forman has some individual people who are very, very nice. They're good people. I'm not saying that anybody individually is bad. But their policies have not come up and reflect policies as it relates to black people that is not just. Because they gave $2 million to the Y that is not opened up. How do you open up and you walk in with $2 million? You don't have a mortgage. I said, give $2 million to us. You gave it to them. What you do for others, do for them. Do the same thing. Make it equitable. And they said, well, we can't do that. But you come back soon. I said, well, when is soon? So I come back next year. And they said, nah. I said, can we come back the year after that? Nah. Can we come back the year after that, 3 years? We might consider it then. And I'm saying, no, wait a minute. There's no equity in this. First of all, the $50,000 you want to give me when you gave somebody else $1 million is the same thing they did to the slaves. Because during slavery, after the master ate all the good pieces of the hog, then the slaves were getting the scraps. They got oxtails and pig feet and chicken necks and hog jaws and gizzards and intestines. It's called chitlins. And I'm not a chitlin man. I want to be an American. I want the same rights that all Americans, as a citizen of this country, I want everything that everyone else gets. We deserve it because we helped build this country. It's called equity. Let me give you a few terms. I want you to get them through. The reason West Louisville is so poor, you know it's poor, it's destitute. It has nothing to do with the West Louisvillians. Put it down. It has to do with redlining. Where banks did not invest in black communities solely on the basis of race. You couldn't get loans. And then it got outlawed against the law, and then they went another way, and that's individual redlining. They had a Community Reinvestment Act in which you had to invest in black communities, but then they said, we're going to give you some money to build your house, but we're going to give you subprime loans, toxic loans, Wells Fargo. These loans they know were going to fail. They give you these toxic loans, and that is why when the housing crisis took place at the end of the Bush administration, hear me, Black people lost over 40% of our wealth because our wealth is in housing, because we have not had an opportunity to get into the stock market, and the housing bubble, the housing crash, which took away our wealth. And black wealth has gone down like this, and it's continuing to go down. This is what's happening in our country. That is why in the 2020 election, the big issue of the 2020 election is wealth inequality. Not just with blacks, but with poor whites who work hard and cannot get ahead. Well, the 1% control 40% of the wealth, 20% of the country controls 90% of the wealth. This great wealth divide. Individual redlining, so they stopped that. Now we have a new form of redlining, and that's philanthropic redlining. And philanthropic redlining is economic underinvestment by philanthropy into black-led institutions of social change. Now, if you think, well, this is really a black and white issue, it's not. It's a justice issue. I have whites who are working with me to try to bring justice in this country. It's not blacks, it's people of goodwill who want a better America. Listen to me. They're opposed to institutional racism. I want you to get this down. You take a picture. This is very important. Institutional racism is this: when institutional policies and practices create different outcomes for different racial groups. In other words, if you're giving one people all the money, automatically you know the outcomes are going to be different because of policies. What needs to change is our policies. Policies need to change. Institutional racism. And here's another one, white privilege. What do we mean by that? White privilege means having something of value that is denied non-whites simply because of the group they belong to rather than because of anything they've done or failed to do. So if you tell me, okay, when can I get some money? Why can't we get the same amount of money? I don't know. Well, why are you giving them money and they haven't done anything yet? I don't know. Yes, you do know. You know. White privilege. And this, my brothers and sisters, hurts our community and creates the wealth gap. You know, often I'm asked, preachers are asked, what's the future of our church? What is the future of our church? Wrong question. The question is not what's the future of our church, but what are the churches of the future going to look like? And when it comes to our city, listen, Louisville, city council, mayor, listen. Listen, corporate Louisville. I hope this can go viral. Listen, Louisville, Kentucky, who has a governor who said, I'm going to literally, we might have to go to war and kill people in order to protect our privileges. That's what your governor said. In other words, we got all the wealth, we got all the power, we got the money, and we will kill you and fight you. That's what the governor of this state said. Listen, my brothers and sisters, the question is not what is the future of Louisville. The question is not what is the future of our city. The question is what are the cities of the future? And let me tell you what the cities of the future are going to look like. The cities of the future are going to be cities in which the residents, if you're going to be a class city, mayor, council, corporate, if you're going to be a city that's going to compete with Nashville that has 4 HBCUs, the cities of the future will be characterized by 2 things. Highly educated people and racial diversity. And the only way you can have racial diversity is to have institutions that are strong that reflect the diversity. Like an HBCU. Amen. Give me my water bottle. I don't have my water bottle. This is what I'm talking about. I'm through, and I'll close with this. This water bottle represents the black community. Why? There's a vacuum and there's water at the bottom. See that? And there's a top on it, a lid, so it can't get out. It's stuck in West Louisville, can't get out. So what we have to do is this. Have to take the lid off so that no one is stuck permanently, so we have a permanent, a cast like you do in India. Now, this is where the philanthropy, this is old school philanthropy. What they do is this. You see that void? What they do is they say, well, we'll bring in somebody from the East End to come and fill the deficit, and we'll provide social services for these people, and they become passive clients who just take what we give them. But guess what? When you fill in the deficit with the people from outside the community to service these people as passive clients, they stay on the bottom. Here's my dream. Take the top off. And instead of somebody from the outside filling in the deficit, I say do this. Take these people who've been down. Show them who they are. Show them how great they are. Show them how intelligent and brilliant they are. And motivate them. And push them. And if you push them, what do you notice? Well, let me ask you a question. Who filled the deficit? The people who were down. So guess what? If you do this for people, you don't have to subsidize their membership to the Y, because they would have gotten an education so they can have the dignity of paying for their own membership at the Y. And guess what? If you take the lid off of them and keep on motivating them, pushing them, and showing them what they can do, because you've given them examples of people who are doing it who look like them, not only will they fill the deficit, but baby, they'll go over the top. I'm out of here.
Come on, let's stand all over this worship center. The doors of the church are open.